he get there with the second effort? The ball has come out. No whistle on the field. Rayshawn Jenkins the other way. No one has blown this dead yet. Jenkins is going to go the distance, and now they have to sort it all out.
Wow. What a massive turn of events should this one hold for the Seattle Seahawks.
4th and goal.
Such a shame. We got off to such a great start, and then look what happened. Well, guys, yesterday the Seattle Seahawks got their butts absolutely beaten by the New York Giants. It was a miserable defeat. There was not a lot good to come out of it, and it really ended up being a major, major disappointment. So the reality is we're 3-2 after starting 3-0. We face the San Francisco 49ers, the big bullies on the block on Thursday. And then 10 days after that, the Atlanta Falcons, who are playing a lot better than we are right now. The question is, what's going to happen? Are we going to be 3-4? What does the future look like? And what does this game actually mean for the Seattle Seahawks? If I had my little video to play, I'd play it right now, but I don't. Thanks for being here, guys. I am Mike Barra, also known as Seahawk Boy Mike. Great to have you guys here with me, and we're going to talk a little bit more Seahawks football today. I'm having to do this a little bit differently today. I'm not streaming on my normal software. So I'm going to create this stream, upload it to Rumble, and then go on from there. Well, yesterday's game was a game of highlights and lowlights for the Seattle Seahawks. The highlight, of course, the 102-yard touchdown return by Mr. Baker there. Quite a play, or Jenkins. Quite a play, very exciting stuff, but you forget about the fact that they'd given up about a 90-yard drive up until that point to get the Giants to 4th and 1 on the 1-yard line. Now, I'm a big advocate that that was a mistake. They shouldn't have gone for it on 4th down. I think it's debatable whether he got across the line before he fumbled the ball. Seahawks were lucky on a couple calls on that one and managed to score and take a 7-0 lead. It's important to think about this in this context. This is the only time in the last 2 games that the Seahawks have led during that 1 quarter or so where they had the lead when they should have been behind 7-0, because the Giants should have scored, or at the very least 3-0 if the Giants just take the field goal. They haven't led now in really about 8 quarters, and that is not a good sign. The defense got run over again yesterday. Guys, Leonard Williams is not... He is not a defensive lineman. He is a speed bump, and we're paying this guy $20-some million. I think it just it just really emphasizes, I believe, all the dramatic mistakes that have been made by this front office over the last several years. And, you know, the game was miserable in the sense that we got out coached, we got outplayed, we got out hustled, we got out hit, we got beat up. We lost some guys to injury, and then to add insult to injury, when we had a chance to tie the game at 23, well, guess what? This happened.
This to tie the game at 23, and it's blocked! Isaiah Simmons, and picked up by Bryce Ford Wheaton, and he is going to go! The Giants sideline around. This to tie the game at 23, and it's blocked! Isaiah Simmons, and picked up by Bryce Ford Wheaton, and he is going to go!
That was it. That was the end of the game right there. That was the decisive play. And, you know, again, I think the key thing to take away from the breakdowns everywhere. There were breakdowns on the offensive line. There were breakdowns on the defensive line. There were breakdowns in the secondary. We gave up long touchdown throws. Daniel Jones ran over, through, and around the Seahawks, and it was really just, it was a miserable experience. It was absolutely no fun whatsoever. And, you know, again, as we go on and look at the box score, it really doesn't tell the story of the dominance that I think that the Giants really imposed upon the Seahawks. It was, you look at Daniel Jones' stats, and they were pretty good. 23 of 34 for 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He got sacked 3 times. We got to him a couple times. 109.6 rating. That's really, really good. They had Tyrone Tracy rushed 18 carries for 129 yards, a 7.2 average, a long of 27. Daniel Jones scrambled 11 times for 38 yards, hurt the Seahawks on a number of occasions. And, again, you look at the receivers. Tyrone Tracy caught a ball for 1 yard. The Giants did a really great job of game planning for this game. They had 10 days to prepare. The Seahawks were on a short week. There's just a lot of stuff that played into the misery that they caused us yesterday. And it was just, our secondary didn't cover, our linebackers didn't do much. It really was an unpleasant afternoon. Now, as we look into this, well, what are the causes? Well, the tendency, of course, is to blame Geno Smith. 28 of 40 again, high percentage, 284 yards, a 7.1 average, which is pretty good, but only 1 touchdown, 7 sacks for 53 yards, 98.3 rating, and he ran for 72 yards. So he actually had a big long run on a scramble. That was very aggressive play on his part, and he did really well. Then another time, he was running for a first down, and he ended up sliding short of the first down instead of sacrificing his body to get the first down. And, again, this just shows sort of a lack of leadership. After the game was over, the Seahawks only rushed for 32 yards, only 32 yards. And after the game, Mike McDonald said, well, we got to find a way. We got to find a way to get Zach Charbonnet more involved in the game. And, here's what I have to say about that, which is that, okay, you know what? Fine, let's do that. Except you have to actually give him the ball. Zach Charbonnet, again, what did he have? He had 5 touches, I believe. He had 2 carries and 3 receptions, and he actually was targeted 5 times. So that is 9 or 8 more touches. Let's see, 5 and 2. Okay, 7 more touches that went to Zach Charbonnet that could have gone to Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is faster. He's better. He's more elusive. Zach Charbonnet should not be getting any touches. He's the backup running back. The only thing he did last week was get a fine for $45,000 for what looked like a completely illegal block. So that was not a good situation. We have to get past this idea that, we have 2 good backs and we have to use them. No, we don't. We have 1 really good back. Rob Staten argued yesterday he's top 10 at his position. He may be, but how do we know when he only gets 18 or 19 or 20 yards or whatever he had yesterday? The bottom line is Walker should be getting every touch in this offense. You look at the Giants. You look at what they did again with Tyrone Tracy. And they handed him the ball in space. They pitched it to him. And when he got the ball, he took off like a rocket. North-south, straight line speed. Zach Charbonnet doesn't have that. Zach Charbonnet does not have that kind of speed. And the difference was palpable in how fast the Giants running backs were, including Daniel Jones, versus how slow Zach Charbonnet was. All of those carries, all of those touches, all need to be going to Ken Walker. I want to see 20 targets and touches by Ken Walker before I see any for Zach Charbonnet. Charbonnet should only be in the game if Walker is injured or desperately needs a break. That's the only time Charbonnet should be in the game because he's nowhere near as good. And again, the Giants were able to exploit and take advantage of us. The other thing, too, that was really interesting in this is when Daniel Jones ran, he ran over our guys. Now, the Seahawks, Mike McDonald prefers smaller, quicker linebackers who can cover. The downside of that is when you face a big, strong, powerful quarterback like Daniel Jones, you ain't going to be able to stop him. And Jones, I would say, dished out more punishment than he delivered. Now, the question is the question at hand is is Geno Smith the problem? Well, you can look at this and you can say, well, Geno, it's not really fair. He's not really the problem. He had 284 yards again, but many of them came in what was essentially garbage time when the Giants were way up. They were up 29. They were up by 9 points. They should have been up by more. They should have won this game about 36-13. And they were just giving up the yards to run the clock. They were playing very soft defenses. So when the pressure was on, Geno did very little. He didn't handle the pressure. He got sacked. At least he didn't throw any interceptions. But again, he's not productive. He only had 1 touchdown. He's on a pace for 17 touchdowns this year. And you are not going to win football games doing that. It's really just really that simple. So, as I was posting over on Seahawk Boy Mike, I talked about this as a trap game. I actually predicted the Seahawks would win 19-13, and the game was right on track to go about that pace. But unfortunately, it became a trap game, and we lost. And again, you play a short week against a team that's had 10 days to prepare. They've got the advantage. They took advantage yesterday, and we weren't able to do a whole lot about it. The problem, though, as I point out right here, is that when you lose a trap game, now what you have to do is you have to win a game against a better team in tough circumstances that you shouldn't win in order to make up for it. And honestly, I don't know what game that's going to be. His inability to score touchdowns is alarming, Chris says. I agree with that. It's definitely a problem when you've got Jackson Smith-Njigba and you've got DK Metcalf, who fumbled again for the second straight week, and you've got Tyler Lockett. You should be producing more touchdowns. And the fact that Geno is not should tell you that I've been right all along the last 3 years, last 3 off seasons, when I've said this team needs to get a talented young quarterback. There were some other things that happened in the game that I think were you're getting taken advantage of. And it's not going to get any better. Here come the 49ers, the bullies of the block, are going to come in and be ready to beat up on the Seahawks again next week on Thursday. And honestly, I think it's going to be pretty ugly. I don't think that we're going to be a whole lot better. I don't see what we can do. We're going to get a few more guys back, but I really don't see where this all comes from. Where does the improvement come from next week? I don't know where it's going to come from, because it doesn't seem to me like it's going to come at all from the players that we have and the coaching staff that we have. Jay Gruden got, the special teams coach, got totally outcoached on that block. It was apparently legal. Now, we all know if the Seahawks had done that, they would have been called. It would have been a penalty. It would have come up with some excuse for a penalty, and the Seahawks would not have gotten the block kick. But that didn't happen. And, you got to look at our special teams. You got to look at our offensive coordinator. They're trying to blame Ryan Grubb. But again, how fair is it to blame Ryan Grubb? I'm not really sure it's particularly fair, because I think he's a pretty good offensive coordinator. He's certainly better and more imaginative than the guys we've had in here the last few years. The problem, as I see it, is the personnel. So where we're at now is we play the 49ers next Thursday. I said all along, I thought that was an L. We play the Falcons 10 days later. I thought that was a W, because I thought the Falcons were going to be awful. They're not awful. They look good. We're playing them on the road at 10 in the morning. I think we're 3-4 after that stretch. And then what happens to us after that? Then what happens becomes the issue. I don't know what to think or what to do, except to maybe look at the schedule and see if we can come up with some more wins. So the Giants game was a loss. And as we look at this, going forward, okay, why are we not sharing? As we look at the schedule going forward, It just gets uglier. That's a loss. We're 3-3. I think the Falcons game is a loss. We're 3-4. I think the Buffalo Bills game is a loss. We're 3-5. One of these games that looks like a loss is going to have to become a win to make up for the Giants. I don't see us having a chance until week 9 against the Rams to pull back to 4-4 and have a shot at maybe making a playoff spot. Then we lose to the 49ers, probably beat the Cardinals, probably beat the Jets, probably beat the Cardinals, lose to the Packers, lose to the Vikings. Bears game is a toss-up. Rams game is probably a win. LA Chargers probably a loss. Titans, I don't know what situation they're going to be in. The Browns, I told you guys at the beginning of this season, I thought that this was a 8-9 or 9-8 team. I was mocked for it, especially after the preseason when we all bought into the fact that this team was better than it actually was. And even Rob Staten beat up on me a little bit, saying I was too pessimistic. And did I really want the Seahawks to succeed? Well, the answer is yes, I do. But I also am really clear about the fact that that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen with John Schneider as the GM. We used to think the problem was Pete Carroll. Now we know the problem is John Schneider and Pete Carroll. And they both have to go before we can start this team over again, unless John Schneider suddenly wakes up and goes and gets himself a talented young quarterback like CJ Stroud, who he could have had 2 years ago, or Jaden Daniels, who he had no shot at, or Michael Penix. The bottom line is you are going to have to take a risk and go get a quarterback at some point. All right. So how do we do that? Again, I think the first step is to stop deluding ourselves as to how good this football team actually is. They're not very good, and they're not going to get better. And they have a bunch of players that are over 30 or around 30 that aren't producing. So our situation right now is that we're 12 million under the cap for 2024. We're 6 million under the cap for 2025. I don't know how that happened. But with restructures and things that we did, we've managed to get under the cap for 2024 and 2025. The problem with that is that means you can't trade anybody this year. If you trade Geno this year, you get hit with a $13 million cap charge. If you trade DK, you get hit with a $21 million cap charge. So you can't trade guys. Now, if it was me, I would have set it up so that I could be a seller at the trade deadline, get as many draft picks as I can, and go get my quarterback. Go get a quarterback, at least a guy you think has a chance. That's not going to happen this year because everything will put us over the cap. So when we get into 2025, what are we going to do? Well, the reality is we have a quarterback who can barely get the ball to our receivers, really. He's only got 5 touchdowns in 5 games. That's not good enough. And this quarterback is not going to get any better. He's not. Geno is not going to get better. Let's close the ad. He's not going to get better. So you have to start at the top. If you cut Geno, you save $25 million under the cap for 2025. So let's cut him. Tyler Lockett is getting less productive. He's 33 years old. If you cut him, you save $17 million under the cap. Let's cut him. DK, what's the point of having a receiver like DK Metcalf if you have to pay him $30 million a year, the going rate for the top receivers, and your quarterbacks are Geno Smith and Sam Howell? There's no point. And if you go get a new quarterback, it's going to take 2 or 3 years for him to get good enough to really get the ball to DK. And then DK will be 30 years old, 29, 30 years old. And to keep him, you're going to have to pay him $30 million a year. So under the new restructure, if you cut DK or trade him, you save about $10 million. So I say you trade him for what you could get, maybe a second and a fifth, and you move on. Draymond Jones, 28 years old, not doing hardly anything out there. Leonard Williams, not a defensive lineman. He's a speed bump. Uchenna Nwosu, let's be honest, this guy hasn't played football in a year. He hasn't done a thing in a year. He can't stay healthy. He's 29 years old. You don't want big money invested in a guy like that. You do not want a $21.5 million cap hit on a guy like that. You have to cut him loose. Noah Fant, utterly useless. Barner and Russell are probably more productive than him. $9 million cap savings. That's it. Now, I'd also probably get rid of Jason Myers, but you do those things, those painful things, and you say this team is simply not good enough. If you can trade any of these guys, which I seriously doubt, try to get draft picks for him. The only guy you're going to get for him is DK, and you're not going to get a first out of him, I don't think, given the current state. You might get it from Kansas City. You might get a first out of him. But let's say you get a second and a fifth. So next year you have a first, 2 seconds, 2 thirds, I believe, a fourth, 2 fifths. And you have $100 million in cap space. Go get your quarterback. Go get your quarterback. Draft yourself another wide receiver or two. Draft a couple of defensive linemen. Draft a couple or sign a couple of offensive linemen. The cool thing about all these cuts is the only dead money would be $231,662 after all those cuts. This is what needs to happen, is a complete admission that this team is not good enough, that this team as constructed is not going to be good enough. You go get yourself a quarterback, and you build around the few young players that you do have that are worth investing in. George Fant, probably cut him too. It would also help if Byron Murphy was an impact player at an impact position. And I hear people go, oh, well, game would have been different if Byron Murphy had played. Really? The guy's got like 4 tackles this year. He's not an impact player. Pay Mafe, you pay Hall, you pay Murphy, you pay Smith-Njigba, you pay Cross. I guess you pay Witherspoon. He's not doing much either. And you go get your quarterback. Those are the only choices you really have to rebuild this team. The question is will John Schneider's ego allow him to admit to himself how bad he screwed this situation up and what he needs to do, which is to admit this team's not good enough. This team that I put together is not good enough. When they traded Russell Wilson, they didn't embrace a full rebuild. Should have done it right then. Should have gone and gotten a quarterback in 2022 or 2023. They had the chance, but they thought they were contenders. We found out yesterday they're not. They got to get a lot better on the line of scrimmage. They got to get a lot better at a lot of positions. Okay, that's what I got. Thursday, I expect 49ers 31, Seahawks 20, something like that. I don't see us getting more than 20 points against them. I think their defense is probably better than the Giants. And I think it's another painful defeat, but we'll see. I hope I'm wrong. But let's face reality. We have to embrace the suck. We have to embrace the change. But this is the team we're stuck with this year, and it's going to be another 8-9, 9-8, bounce out of the playoffs in the first round year. That is what we have sown, and that is what we shall reap for trusting John Schneider.